Drifting in silence, Vale adjusted the filtration valve for the 5th time that hour. It made no difference. The life support system was failing, slowly and irreversibly. Every breath tasted more like metal. He floated, weightless inside the cracked emergency pod, wrapped in the sour scent of recycled air and the stench of desperation. The black hole outside spun like an eye, patient and blind. It had been days, or weeks. He didn't know anymore. The NAV systems had gone offline after the attack. One moment his cruiser had been mapping the subspace corridor. The next, it was a burning graveyard. Whatever hit them hadn't come for conquest. It had come for erasure. Ilari cruisers didn't just vanish. Yetis had. His fingers trembled as he rerouted backup power to the communication relay again. Every attempt had failed. Ilari space? Silent. Allied networks? Empty. Not even automated satellites responded. The distress beacon had been firing for 12 cycles now. Different frequencies, modulations, even ancient wartime encryption bands. Nothing. Vale leaned back against the seat, skin pale, eyes sunken. The pod lights dimmed again. Another energy conservation loop. Soon, the pod would prioritize oxygen for systems instead of him. He'd seen the prioritization algorithm. It didn't lie. He stared at his reflection in the cracked console glass. A survivor. A ghost. Maybe both. Maybe neither. He began recording. This is Vale of Ilari Diplomatic Fleet. Identification code 97 Keshul. Cruiser Veritas. Presumed destroyed. All hands lost. I am the last. His voice shook. Coordinates unknown. Oxygen levels below viability in 3 cycles. Fuel none. Mobility none. Shields non-functional. He hesitated. I leave this record for anyone who finds it. If anyone ever does. His voice cracked. We believed we were the center, that we were safe, that our technology and treaties shielded us. We were wrong. He looked toward the blackness outside. Is this how it ends? He whispered. In silence? Forgotten? He stopped recording. For a while, he just floated, staring, remembering his crew, their last screams drowned in the hull breaches, their faces frozen mid-turn. He tried to remember their names. Not all came back. He reached for the emergency signal controls. A final gambit, one that hadn't been used in over 4 centuries, forgotten during the Treaty of R. It operated on an old quantum frequency standard, predating modern alliances, before the rise of the Ilari, before the Ilari called themselves the Apex. They used to mock it, the ghost frequency, a last resort, a child's myth, used by a primitive species long believed extinct. The humans, he didn't believe they were real. They were a cautionary tale, creatures of war and desperation, violent, obsolete, their technology backward, their systems crude. But the myth said they always respond. He stared at the old console. He had nothing left, no empire to call, no gods to pray to. With trembling hands, he initiated the signal. A single word repeated in every language recorded by the Concorde. Help. The pod shuddered. Power dipped again. Oxygen levels fell into the critical red zone. Vale slumped in his seat, heart slowing. He watched the stars blur. His vision tunneled. The black hole yawned wider. Closer. He began murmuring, voice soft. They said, when the stars fall silent, call to Earth. They will hear. He smiled weakly, barely conscious. But Earth is a myth, and myths don't answer. The pod went dark. Time passed. Then a flicker, a blip on the console, a response. A voice, clear and undeniable, etched in old code. We heard you. He stirred, confused, certain it was another hallucination. Then the console lights pulsed again, reactivating. Engines thrummed outside the pod. A shadow passed over the viewport, cutting off the light from the spinning singularity. The shape was crude, angular, armored like no ship he'd ever seen, not sleek like the Ilari cruisers. This ship looked forged, not grown, scarred, blackened, patched with parts that didn't match. But it moved with purpose, power, intent. The pod jolted. Magnetic clamps engaged. A docking tether reached out like a mechanical hand. His last view before blackout was a crude painted word on the hull. Deliverance. Everything went dark again. The light was dim when Vale awoke. Not artificial white like Ilari's ships, but warm, amber hue that buzzed faintly. His body ached. The air smelled sterile, laced with chemical antiseptics, and something strange, metal and grease. He tried to sit up. Pain flared through his ribs. Machines beeped, and a monitor flickered to life beside him. Alien characters rolled across the screen, blocky, ugly, functional. But underneath them, a translation bar scrolled in Ilari glyphs. Vital signs stable. Oxygen normal. Welcome, guest. The door hissed open. A figure stepped inside. Taller than him, wrapped in thick, practical armor, helmet tucked under one arm. Human. Female. Late middle age, judging by the creases around her eyes. Sharp stare, short-cropped black hair, one eye cybernetic. She looked him over like a soldier assessing a wounded animal. "You're lucky," she said. "We caught your pod just before it crossed the event horizon. 10 more seconds, and there wouldn't have been anything to catch." He opened his mouth. His throat burned. She handed him a canister of water. He drank. "Where am I?" he rasped. "You're on the Deliverance," she said. "Human vessel. Commander Alara Stroud." She nodded. "And you are—" He hesitated. "Vale, Ilari diplomatic engineer. Fleet designation Veritas. Or, I was—" Alara raised an eyebrow but didn't press. She left him alone. The door sealed behind her. He sat in silence, absorbing the impossibility. Humans. Real. Alive. And apparently insane enough to respond to a 400-year-old frequency no one used anymore. A day passed. He was allowed to walk. The ship was cramped, loud, and clearly retrofitted. Pipes ran exposed along the walls. Panels buzzed and flickered. Every surface bore signs of damage. Scars of battle or time. Nothing elegant. Everything worked. The crew barely acknowledged him at first. A few glanced. A few nodded. One offered him a steaming mug of something brown and bitter-smelling. "Drink. It's coffee. You look like hell." He sipped. It was awful. It was perfect. The engineer who handed it to him was named Rook. Short, bald, missing 2 fingers. Talked like a drill sergeant and moved like a machine. "We got your pod hooked up in Bay 2. Thing's a relic. No offense." "None taken," Vale said honestly. His pod was a relic now. He followed Rook to the main deck. There, screens lined the walls, flashing data and sensor sweeps. Crewmen in patchwork uniforms moved with quiet efficiency. They didn't salute. No military formality. Just rhythm, practice, routine. One station had a sticker. "We answer or we're nothing." He asked about it. Rook shrugged. "We answer distress calls. Any and all. That's our mission. Doesn't matter who or what. If it screams in the dark, we go." Vale frowned. "Why?" Rook stared at him like he'd asked why stars existed. "Because no one else does." Alara found him later. "Come to the bridge." He followed. The bridge was a semicircle, built for utility, not ceremony. Screens flickered. A pilot munched on dry food while steering. Alara pointed to the main display. "You're deep in the gray expanse. No formal patrols. No territory claims. No one to help. You're damn lucky we picked up your signal." He looked at the screen. Starfields, radiation clouds, the faint swirl of the black hole behind them. "You're not military," he said. "No." She gestured to the crew. "Most of us are veterans. A few are ex-cons. Some are just angry or lost. We take broken people and give them a purpose." He didn't understand. "For what gain?" She tilted her head. "You're from a place where everything has a value. Wait, cost. We're not. We don't leave people behind. We remember what that felt like." She tapped the data pad. 2 centuries ago, we broadcast a call. Earth was burning. The galaxy turned its back. Everyone ignored it. Everyone. Her voice turned flat. "So we decided Never again. Doesn't matter who you are. If you send the call and we hear it, we come. He stared. You didn't know who I was. What if I was hostile? She smiled, tired. Then we'd deal with it, but we'd still come. Later, he sat in the mess hall. A pair of humans argued over whether a fusion coil could power an ancient plasma cutter. Someone played music, ugly, loud, alien. A dog barked from somewhere below deck. Vale watched it all. The chaos, the order within it, the way humans fought, laughed, cursed. He couldn't decide if it was madness or genius. He pulled out a data slate and typed, "Human culture unpredictable, crude, emotional, lacks structure, but survival rate exceptional." He walked past the cargo bay. Inside, he saw half a dozen drones, painted, dented, patched. None were uniform, but each had kill counts marked, symbols etched into metal. A woman in a hover chair was calibrating targeting software, using only eye movements and vocal clicks. Vale watched. She noticed and smirked. "You're the Ilari, huh?" He nodded. "Name's Joe. Used to walk. Got spine burned during a hull breach." She patted the drone beside her. "But these let me stay in the fight." He didn't know what to say. She said it for him. "We don't quit. Ever." That night, lying in a bunk barely big enough to hold him, Vale stared at the ceiling. They had no grand empire, no vast fleet, no superior biology. But they'd come for him. Not for gain, not for politics. They came because someone called. And that, he realized, was the most dangerous thing of all. The next morning, the ship jolted hard, gravity briefly flickering. Alarms buzzed, but only mildly. On most vessels, such a shake would trigger panic. Here, it meant routine. Vale clutched the rail outside the mess hall. Rook brushed past him, unbothered. Asteroid debris. Minor impact. Hull's fine. Don't soil yourself. He didn't respond. He was learning. That humans didn't panic wasn't because they lacked fear. It was because they expected everything to go wrong and had plans for all of it. Still, when internal comms crackled and Alara's voice came on, he tensed. "Bridge crew to stations. Vale tops. Now." He hurried. When he arrived, the room was dimmed. Displays cast blue light over tense faces. Ilara stood with arms crossed, eyes on projection of a ship. Twice the size of the Deliverance, sleek and smooth, like a blade carved from moonlight. He recognized the design instantly. "Kurigen," he muttered. Ilara looked over. "Friends of yours." "No," he said. "Predators. Slavers. Biological data harvesters. They destroyed the Veritas." Rook cursed softly from behind a console. "So, the bastards are back." The image zoomed. Kurigen, vessels never moved alone. Already, 2 smaller escort crafts flanked the main one, and they weren't heading away. "They picked up your old distress signal," Ilara said. "Backtracked it. They're sweeping the zone now." Vale stared. "You should run." "No," she said flatly. "You don't stand a chance. They're tech. Outguns us by miles. I know." She didn't flinch, but they also didn't expect a human ship here. He looked at her, baffled. "What difference does that make?" "They don't know how stupid we are," Rook said cheerfully. "We're too dumb to run." Ilara smiled grimly. "Or too stubborn. Plans formed fast. Weapons charged. Shields recalibrated." Vale watched in disbelief as humans prepped for battle not with panic, but with anticipation. Hunger. "We've hit Kuri patrols before," Ilara said, handing Vale a small Neuralink band. "You're going to help us jam their sense array." "I'm not a soldier." "Neither are half of us," she said. "You survived a black hole. You'll do fine." The ship launched flares to mimic engine trails, false exits, then cut power, drifting near a debris field like another corpse in the dark. The Kurigen approached, scanning. Inside the hull, everyone went silent. Then the ship's belly opened. Small drone pods launched, dozens of them, half jury-rigged, some built from scrap and mining gear. But they moved with eerie coordination. Vale watched the feed. The drones swarmed the escorts first, targeting engine flares, cutting them from the rear. One exploded. The other sputtered sideways, venting plasma. The main Kree ship retaliated, sending a wave of energy pulses. A few drones evaporated instantly, but one made it close, carrying a dirty fusion bomb. It detonated, not enough to breach the hull, but enough to fry the outer sensor net. Now! Illyra shouted. The Deliverance surged forward, hull vibrating. Main cannons fired, old kinetic slugs, not energy weapons. Vale saw them punch into the weakened sensor dome. The Kree vessel reeled, unsure how to respond to weapons 1,000 years behind the curve. Target their AI core spine, Vale said quickly. That class still relies on quantum thread command bridges. Rook grinned. Say that again, but in blow-up-here terms. Vale pointed. There. The next volley struck true. A rip tore through the Kree ship's midsection. Fire burst out. Debris scattered. The comms erupted with cheers. But then came the retaliation. A full plasma beam struck the Deliverance dead center. The bridge lights blew out. Sparks flew. 2 consoles burst into flame. Vale hit the ground hard. Someone screamed. Someone else barked orders. Emergency lights flickered to life. The hull groaned. Status. Illyra coughed, dragging herself upright. Shields down. Engines half dead. Rook shouted. We got a minute, maybe 2. The Kree vessel drifted, damaged, but still capable. Vale stood, chest heaving. You can't beat it now. You need to run. No, Illyra said again. Not until it can't chase. She keyed open a panel beside the helm, revealing a black box labeled Tantalus. Vale's blood ran cold. That's a core breach device. That's illegal tech. You'll vaporize this entire sector. Not the sector, she said. Just that ship. She input a code. The device began to hum. Get to the escape deck, she ordered. Now. I won't leave. Go. We don't abandon people. That includes you. Crew scrambled. The device lit with violent light. Illyra stayed behind, hands on the controls. The last thing Vale saw as the escape shuttle door closed was her silhouette framed in firelight, unmoving. Seconds later, the Deliverance rammed the Kree-Gen ship at full burn. The Tantalus device detonated mid-impact. From the shuttle viewport, Vale watched 2 stars bloom, then vanish. Silence. The crew aboard the shuttle, bruised, bleeding, broken, said nothing. No mourning yet. No time. They had survived. Again, because they refused to do anything else. Hours passed in silence aboard the emergency shuttle. The survivors of the Deliverance floated through space, engines offline, systems conserving power. Vale sat near a cracked viewport, staring at the void where the Kree-Gen vessel and Illyra had vanished. Nothing remained. Not debris, not radiation, just black emptiness, as if the universe itself had sealed a wound closed. No one spoke her name yet, not out of disrespect, but because names had weight here. They were saved until it was time to carry them properly. Rook sat hunched at the navigation console, fingers tapping nervously. He'd refused medical attention for the burns on his arms. The dog, a wiry scar-faced mutt named Grit, sat beside him, whining occasionally. "Comm relays shot," Rook finally muttered. "We've got emergency beacon running, but no one's answering." Vale glanced at the others. Jo was conscious, face pale, her chair sparking. A younger crewman, barely more than a boy, tended to her stabilizers. A third had lost an eye and was holding a blood-soaked rag like it was normal. These people had no rank insignia, no medals, no clan ties, but they were the strongest beings he'd ever seen. He leaned forward. "Is there any way to jump out?" Rook snorted. "Hyperdrive's dead. You want to fly to the next star? Be my guest." Vale opened his data slate. He still had fragments of the Veritas long-range maps, useless in human hands, maybe, but not to him. He started cross-referencing radiation signatures, pulse echoes, stellar positions. After 30 minutes, he pointed at a spot on the screen. There's an old fuel relay station there. Abandoned, but it may still have a solar tap. Enough to power your jump drive for one burst. Rook looked, That's 6 hours out. Then we leave now, Vale said. Rook grunted. Never thought I'd take orders from a diplomat. Vale met his eyes. You didn't. You took advice. Now move. The crew responded quickly. What remained of them fell into place with no need for orders. They were fluid, built from shared trauma and habits. Within minutes, the shuttle's backup thrusters kicked in, groaning under the weight. Time stretched. Vale found himself alone at the rear viewport again, watching stars drift slowly. His thoughts circled Alara. She hadn't hesitated. She hadn't even paused. She'd chosen to die not for her species, but for him, an alien, a stranger. Why? What kind of species made that decision without demand or debt? Back on Eeler, such sacrifice would be reserved for bonded kin or state-level obligation. Nothing else. But here, these humans answered every call like it was their own blood crying. He didn't understand it. He respected it, but he didn't understand. The shuttle shook again. We're close, Rook called out. I see the relay station. The derelict structure loomed ahead, orbiting a dead moon. Its panels were cracked, parts floating loose, but the core reactor still glowed faintly. With careful maneuvering, they docked. Airlocks creaked. Grit barked once, low. Inside the relay it was cold and dark. Automated systems had long since shut down. Vale found the main interface. It rejected his credentials, then accepted them when he bypassed the encryption manually. He was still an engineer after all. The solar tap came online. Just enough juice. Rook hooped. We're jumping out in 5. Everyone strapped in. Vale watched them. No celebration. No joy. Just quiet relief, as if they didn't trust it yet. The stars blurred. The jump engaged. Moments later, they reappeared in orbit above a human outpost. Small, dusty, industrial. The station sent a signal immediately. Rescue crews launched. The shuttle docked. And suddenly, they were surrounded by people again, medics, engineers, officials. A woman in a clean uniform stepped aboard, blinking at the soot-streaked survivors. Who's in command here? She asked. Everyone turned to Rook. He shook his head. No one's in command. We're from the Deliverance. The woman's face fell. We got your signal. You're the only ones. He nodded. Vale stepped forward. There's something you need to understand. That ship saved my life. But more than that, it stopped the Karijan. It prevented a larger threat from spreading. You need to know what they did. The woman hesitated. Who are you? He stood taller. I'm Vale of the Ilari Union. Diplomatic engineer, 2nd class. I will file a full report to my home world. But before that, I'm staying. Staying, she repeated. With the humans, with this crew, or what's left of it. Rook gave him a sideways glance. You sure? We're not exactly well-funded. I don't care. I was alone in the void. No one came. Except you. He turned to the rest. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't demand payment. You just came. That kind of loyalty, that kind of madness, doesn't exist in my world. Joe chuckled weakly. You'll get used to it. The medics took them all in for treatment. Days passed. Eventually, Vale stood before a memorial wall being assembled in the outpost hangar. Ilara's name had already been engraved. He added his own carving beneath it, in Ilari script. It read. She answered, We live. A human technician looked over. What's that mean? Vale replied without looking up. Everything. The human nodded. In time, the Deliverance crew reformed. New ship, new designation. Vale stayed with them, helping rebuild. The Ilari offered him a position back home. He declined. He had found something more valuable than rank. He had found purpose. Now, when signals came from deep space, calls from unknown vessels, cries lost in static, he stood with the humans. And when someone asked why they answered, he had only one reply. Because no one else will. And because once in the cold black void, when everything else had given up, the humans had come for him. Not for profit, not for power, but because that's who they were.